Hello, everyone. My name is Mansi, and today I'm here to talk about my research on cognitive dissonance in social settings for adolescents on the autism spectrum. So, what is cognitive dissonance? So, cognitive dissonance theory was introduced by Leon Festinger in 1957, and it essentially explained how humans face psychological discomfort when they hold conflicting beliefs or behaviors. So, what someone may do when they have this discomfort is they may change their behavior, change their belief, or downplay the importance of this conflict. So, let me look into two examples to explain what it looks like. So, for smoking, for example, someone could believe that smoking is unhealthy and that it's bad for health, but maybe they have a habit of smoking frequently. So, this is clearly a contradiction between belief and action, and they might face discomfort from knowing that these two conflict. So, because of that, few things that they might do is they might stop smoking, stop thinking that smoking is unhealthy, or they might just change their perception of this confliction, saying that it's okay if it's unhealthy. There are people doing worse. Now, let's take social media, for example. So, people might think that social media and scrolling on social media for excessive amount of time is unproductive, but maybe they still engage in that behavior and scroll for a long period of time. This might cause them to feel some sort of discomfort knowing that there's a contradiction between their belief and action. And so, to stop this discomfort, they might stop social media, stop thinking that scrolling is unproductive, or they might just think that it's okay if it's unproductive. Maybe I need a break. So, what is the impact of cognitive dissonance? At a core level, it really affects decision making in the sense that cognitive dissonance can sometimes impact our ability to make objective decisions, because it urges us to make decisions based on alleviating discomfort rather than what's the logical choice. There are also many other brain areas involved during this process. Additionally, a high level of cognitive dissonance can lead to stress, anxiety, or even behavioral changes. Now, I wanted to study specifically teenagers for this study, and so that was my target audience. I did widen it a little bit, but the reason I wanted to look into teenagers were because they face increased peer pressure and social complexity, and they often encounter situations that trigger cognitive dissonance. And the more frequent the dissonance, the more higher the emotional impact. So I thought it would be very important to look into this demographic specifically. Now, what does cognitive dissonance and autism spectrum disorder, also known as ASD, look like? So, cognitive dissonance theory, it's really understudied in autistic populations. And since people on the autism spectrum often face social challenges, and many of them have difficulty when it comes to communication, I thought it would be very important to look into people on the autism spectrum specifically, and also at the same time look at social settings specifically. In the future, if there's really more literature on cognitive dissonance for ASD, it could help educators recognize these signs of dissonance to see where there's a confliction in social settings, and it can also really create supportive and inclusive environments. So, really, the question I was looking at is to what extent does cognitive dissonance in verbal individuals aged 12 to 20 on the autism spectrum differ from that of their neurotypical counterparts? And how is the level of dissonance related to the frustration that they experience from conflicting behaviors and beliefs? So, my method to really pursuing this study was, as I mentioned earlier, my target audience were verbal individuals with ASD who were aged 12 to 20 and who attended school. I used Google Forms to really survey them, and all my questions were on a 0 to 5 scale. I looked at two social settings mainly, classroom setting, which was in school, and family gathering settings. I thought both of them really, they gave us a good idea about what a person undergoes socially because both of them were social environments, and also because both of them were pretty different from each other. So the main things I looked into were actions. So what was the frequency of specific actions done in both settings and the interest behind that action. So how interested were they in performing these actions and what was their level of desire to perform these actions. So for example, let me take one question I asked for my classroom setting. It was for the action section, I asked, how often do you volunteer to answer questions in class? And for the interest section, I asked, how interested are you in volunteering to answer questions in class? So this is pretty much how it looked like. So for my participants, my ASD group was made out of 17 people, and my neurotypical or control group had 23 people in it. All participants were informed about the nature of the study, and the participation was voluntary. And all responses remained completely anonymous to protect the participants' privacy. So, the way I really wanted to quantize the results I was getting was through something known as a disparity score, which is simply how often minus how interested. So, before I told you about how I was asking them questions about how much they did an action, and how much they wanted to do that action. I basically subtracted those scores for each, question. And this method of calculating is consistent with methods used in other psychological research for intention behavior gaps, self-discrepancy theory, and also value behavior discrepancies. And it isn't widely applied to cognitive dissonance theory for ASD, but I thought it would be a new framework which would be useful for examining internal conflict specifically. So here are my results. I will be getting into them more specifically, but this is just at a glance what it looked like for my classroom settings. And this is what it looked like for family gatherings. I also asked a question about what their discomfort level was, knowing that um, there was a confliction between their actions and their belief. Like, how did they feel about it? Were they like how discomfort, like how um, did they feel on a comfort level? And my main goal with this was I wanted to compare the discomfort levels or the ratings between the ASD group and the neurotypical group. And I wanted to see if there was a significant difference. And so for this, I used a t-test, a two-sample one, and I wanted to see if there is a statistically significant difference between the true mean discomfort rating now for both classrooms and for family gatherings. And what I got was that there was no statistically significant difference for both of these groups, for both family gathering settings and for also classroom settings. Another thing I wanted to look at was correlation. I wanted to see, looking at the disparity scores, what were the discomfort scores that came along with that. I wanted to see basically if there was an association between the disparity between belief and action and how they felt on a comfort level. What I found was that for classroom settings, the ASD group, it had a weak positive correlation. So there was a slight trend showing that the more the disparity, there was more discomfort. And for the control group, there was a weak negative correlation, which had no clear link between disparity and discomfort. For the family gathering settings, there was a near zero correlation for the ASD group, which means that there was really no meaningful link between disparity and discomfort. And for the control group, there was again a weak positive correlation, but there was a slight trend which showed that the more the dissonance, the more the discomfort. So, looking into the other stats which I shared with you, for the mean disparity scores, for the ASD group, as you can see, for the classroom and the family setting, there was a bit of a difference in those two scores, whereas for the control group, for classroom and family, the mean disparity scores were like pretty close and consistent with each other. Really for the classroom setting for the ASD group, there was a low gap and it was like really close to zero. So there was a short disparity between desire and action. Whereas for family, there was a high gap between the desire and how the frequency of the action, and there was less follow through with that. So what I could tell was there is a difference between how the ASD group performed in a structured environment like school versus an unstructured one like in a family gathering. So the control group was just more consistent than that. Looking into the confidence intervals, I also got something similar out of it. Once again, there is a difference in school and family gathering settings for the ASD group. So the confidence intervals were fully negative for the control group. So they consistently wanted to do more than they actually do. And for the ASD group, for the classroom confidence interval, it included zero, which meant that the true mean disparity score could have shown that the actions did match their intentions. But once again, for the family confidence interval, it was fully negative. So it meant that the true mean disparity score for the ASD group um, showed that they desired to do an action more than they actually did it. Again, going back to my t-test results, looking at if the discomfort levels were statistically significant between both groups. Once again, the discomfort, it really existed in both groups, but differences in the sample weren't large enough to be statistically significant. Now, larger or more diverse samples could reveal deeper patterns, so that's worth looking to in the future. So basically, the key takeaways from my results were that ASC teens may function better in structured settings like a school environment, whereas it was more consistent for the neurotypical group. And external factors may have also played a stronger role in the discomfort uh, rather than just the disparity between the action and belief alone. Maybe there were other factors involved in this. And the emotional discomfort was definitely present in both groups, but it was not statistically significant in this sample. Some limitations in my research study were that I was dealing with a small sample size and it was not randomly sampled either. So it limited generalizability to the broader ASD and neurotypical populations. And there was also a demographic mismatch in the sense that ASD and control groups were not matched for variables like age, gender, or school type, which might have been really confounding variables, which actually um, caused the discomfort than rather than just the belief and behavior disparity alone. Also, because I got all my data through Google Forms, people self-reported their data. So there is a possibility of inaccuracy or bias in participants' responses. So this project was certainly not perfect, but it serves as a foundation for future research. And it provides a framework that can be built upon and refined in the future. Hopefully with better sampling and a wider variety of participants, this could become a strong and meaningful area of study to pursue in the future. There are also other directions we can pursue based on the results I got, which were that ASD participants showed more variation in dissonance in family gatherings in school settings. So there was a difference between just their performance in both of those settings. And that suggests that maybe the type of environment, structured versus unstructured, affects how dissonance is experienced. Future research should probably explore how different social environments impact dissonance levels in autistic individuals. Also, future studies could specifically explore how autistic individuals cope with that discomfort. Right now, we looked into just seeing whether there was a significant difference, but maybe in the future, research could be done to specifically look at how these individuals cope. Because, like I mentioned earlier, there was a scenario where people either they change their belief or their behavior or just their perception of this confliction, but maybe it's different for people on the autism spectrum. So, for example, there was a study conducted in 2022 which showed that there was a use of different coping strategies for autistic individuals. So they basically did things like adjusting their routines, creating recreational activities, or just relying on others. And there was both a problem focused and an emotional focused coping approach. Some people also indulged in more, I guess, negative habits to cope, which meant they were more avoidant or they indulged in self-blame, which linked to poorer mental health. So this is definitely something also worth exploring in the future. So this is it for my research presentation, and I'm open to any questions now.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Mansi. It was very insightful and I learned quite a lot from it. I had few questions for you before I open the tab for question and answers from the audience. So you mentioned that when you observe those individuals, individuals with autism in different settings, structured versus unstructured, like at school versus family, they showed more dissonance when it came to family environment, where things were more unstructured. Do you think it is to be attributed for lack of structure, like structured versus unstructured, or could it be more like in family environments, they feel lesser of a need to mask, so they are able to express their conflicting opinions? Could that be one of the factors instead of structure versus lack of structures? Because a lot of families can be quite structured too. So could it be the dissonance they face is more due to lack of masking, because if they're in school environment they just mask and accept things, but when they're family they feel more comfortable to express difference in opinion.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's actually a huge area of research I'm looking to right now, which is masking specifically. But really, to answer your question, like I mentioned, there were other factors that could have also played a huge role, like whether a person was, more extroverted or introverted could have also made a difference. But like you said, maybe masking did really make a big difference in that sense. And also, what we typically see is that in family settings where there are many more people and it's more, I guess, random in a sense, there's also more peer pressure in that sense, or like I
Mm.
guess uh socially there's like a lot of standards with which a lot of like individuals on the autism spectrum also have to adhere to. When I meant family gatherings, I was also talking about it in like a just at larger scale. It was not like really simply specific to like small family gatherings. So I guess it leaves room for just more uh for it to be more random. So I guess that's definitely something worth pursuing in the future. But yes, I think
Yeah. Audric, we are actually doing a Q&A form where if you are 10 right now, you are classed as a webinar attendee. So what you can do actually is to submit the question in the form that you see below. If you tap on your screen, there would be a Q&A form where you can submit a question if you want to ask anything from Mansi. Yeah.
Mhm. And what was your second question? Or
Yes. Yeah. So what I was wondering was that you mentioned that data was self-reported, so it might be more biased. Why do you think self-reported data tends to be more biased?
so, I guess in my statistic class, we go over something called voluntary bias. It's when people they typically answer forms on their own. They're more likely to sort of like fib a bit, or just sort of I guess underestimate or overestimate parts of just their habits and beliefs and behaviors. I guess rather than directly seeing their habits and how they work daily, if you simply ask them how often they do something, um, maybe they were pushed more to like answer something that seemed more favorable on their side, even though it was an anonymous form, which might have also made a difference.
Okay, got it. Got it. Makes sense. Um, Last question that I have is that a lot of neurodivergent people usually experience very high sense of justice, which can also cause dissonance, which is also seen with individuals with ADHD, right? So, if you were comparing ASD people with neurotypicals, but did you check though if that neurotypical population, some of them might have had ADHD, that could have led to no, not made a difference or no difference in the t test?
I mean,
Because
yeah,
you're essentially
so I asked them, one of the questions I asked them on my forum was, do you face any other, mental health issues or struggles? And for the most part, what I did was I asked my mentor to see what he had to say about like people with other mental health, disorders or like, problems. And for the most part, ADHD also makes a difference, in the just how they view the discomfort between the conflicting behaviors and beliefs. So it does make a difference. But what I saw was in my form, nobody really mentioned that they had any other mental struggles. If they did, perhaps I would have looked more into what that entails and what kind of difference that makes. And I guess accordingly, I might have either taken the response out or at least mentioned that while I was like explaining, saying that there was a person who reported that they had ADHD or not. But for the most part, I did not receive any feedback like that.
okay, got it. Thank you very much for answering all those questions. I think Aldrich might have just wanted to leave. And with that, I will just open the floor for any questions there might be. We'll wait for 2 minutes, and in the meantime, you can probably share your experience doing this research work, what you gained, your something that you realized during it while we wait for questions. Yeah.
I mean, yeah. So I guess cognitive dissonance was really like just an area of study I really wanted to look at. And for me specifically, I want to pursue cognitive science when I go to college. So I wanted to, I guess, study an interdisciplinary field. And I guess just conducting the research was getting the data, like asking people for it was definitely the hardest part. Um, I know like in the future, I know like now I know where to start from, which was definitely something I didn't really have when I first started doing research now. Hopefully, I guess I can build on this framework and what I studied now so that, in the future I have something that is more foolproof and reliable hopefully with a sampled like someone like a sample that is random at sorts. So it's like more statistically significant. But yeah,
Got it. Thank you very much, Mansi, for presenting your work today. It was very insightful, and I'm sure everyone learned something new today through your research work. And I can see it paving a path for future research work in the field. So thank you.
thank you.